Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion today, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience of SmithWeekly, including Brian H., Paul M., and Joe G. On the program today, we are pleased to have a new guest join us. Mr. David Elsley is with us. David is the president and CEO of Cardiol Therapeutics. The company is focused on researching, developing, and bringing to market its CardiolRx drug, which is at its phase 3 clinical trials for treating pericarditis, and also at phase 2 trials for treating myocarditis. The company is also developing its CRD38 drug for use in treating heart failure. Cardiol Therapeutics is listed on the NASDAQ under the symbol CRDL and also on the Toronto Stock Exchange under the symbol CRDL. Mr. Elsley, welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions. Good to have you here.
Thanks, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you today.
Yeah, David, good to chat with you, and thanks for coming on the program. We've got a lot to talk about with Cardiol, and this is our first biotech life science company on our program, so congratulations on that. Good to talk with you. To start off, David, why don't you give us your background and experience in the biotech junior markets, as well as how you came to take the post at Cardiol Therapeutics?
So I've had the great privilege and pleasure of being able to work in heart failure medicine now for over 3 decades. Always focused on the key culprit, which is inflammation. So I've spent my career building relationships with preeminent cardiovascular scientists and cardiologists and business-minded pharmaceutical executives from around the world that ultimately are collaborating with Cardiol across the world to develop the important medicines that we believe are desperately needed to solve significant unmet needs and therapeutic gaps in the heart disease area.
When you came on board, when you looked at the market, you looked at the opportunity with increasing heart-related diseases, even more so in the last, let's call it 4 years roughly. What are the factors? Inflammation, obviously, key one, but any others that have factored into this increase? And how did you determine the approach to drug research as a potential solution for the target conditions?
Well, the real driving forces, Andrew, behind really the epidemic of heart failure, which is perhaps the largest medical challenge facing modern medicine, is the forces of diabetes, obesity, and high blood pressure. And all those factors continue to rise around the world, and it's creating this enormous medical challenge called heart failure, where the heart doesn't function properly as a pump. It's not either filling properly or it's not pumping properly. And it's really that filling function that we're focused on, because inflammation and fibrosis plays sort of a tragic role in that, in its basically impairs the relaxation function of the heart, so it can't fill properly. So it doesn't have sufficient blood to meet metabolic demand. Patients suffer a striking reduction in quality of life, shortness of breath. They become sedentary, immobilized. They have very high risk for mortality, very high risk for frequent hospitalization. And that's really the main target of our therapies, which is to develop, or our real therapeutic strategy is to develop therapies that modify that inappropriate inflammation and target them at unmet needs in heart disease. And that's really what underlies our major efforts in both the Maverick program and the Archer program, and now a really striking focus from the company on CRD38, because it's that third area of focus that's targeting this mass heart failure challenge.
Quite an interesting one among those potential, well, some of them certainly causes, and then some of the other stuff that's been factored in recently as well. And that's probably contributing to increased further risks out there. Well, why don't we talk about the flagship product? It's an oral liquid, non-invasive, phase 2 Trial work is complete with phase 3 starting soon, I suspect. Cover off those recent phase 2 trial results, what you can say at this point, and then, of course, the plans for phase 3 and maybe some of the next milestones expected.
So our late-stage programs are focused on two devastating areas of cardiac inflammation. Our lead program, called Maverick, is focused on recurrent pericarditis. That is a miserable condition that strikes people in their prime of life. Some of your listeners may be familiar with the New York Rangers goalie Lundqvist, who had to retire from hockey in 2021 because of this condition. It leads to pain, chest pain, very striking chest pain, shortness of breath. Really destroys quality of life for folks that can go on for sometimes 6 years in duration. So that is the focal point of our pivotal phase 3 Maverick trial, which is now accelerating at major centers throughout the United States. We have over 20 preeminent centers involved in recruiting the trial in the US, and these include the likes of Johns Hopkins, the Mayo Clinics, Cleveland Clinic, NYU, DeBakey Heart Center, and we're soon going to be adding prominent centers from Europe. So this is going to be a global trial. We anticipate this trial will complete its enrollment in the first part of 2026, and this will position us for a pivotal phase 3 readout, which we believe will underpin a new drug application and entry into a market that many Wall Street analysts are forecasting will reach $1 billion in revenues for the incumbent medicines that are available today. So that's the primary area of focus for our lead twice daily oral medication.
With that, any rough idea? Are we talking second half, end of 2026? When can we expect first news on those phase 3 results?
We anticipate them within the 2026 year, which is very important inflection point for organizations developing new medicines. Andrew, you may be aware, but it could take 7 to 10 years to develop a new cardiovascular medicine, and we're entering the last year of that process. So that is really quite a remarkable achievement for the company and offers great hope for patients suffering from these very debilitating inflammatory heart conditions.
Excellent, David. Well, that's great. Congratulations on carrying it this far and getting close there to the finish line, and the results so far are quite promising. Just talk a little bit about maybe some of the competitor treatments or invasive treatments that are out there. Just talk a little bit about some of the treatments that are currently being used for the conditions. And is there any success really from your view on those other treatments?
So there's basically, with respect to the care pathway in recurrent pericarditis, first-line therapy is typically non-steroidals, think aspirin, or the generic colchicine, which thousands of patients either can't tolerate or don't respond to. And then the challenge is patients are faced with two pathways. One is steroids, which have toxicity and resistance concerns, very significant concerns with respect to safety with long-term use. And you have the hard-hitting immune suppressing therapies, which basically block the immune system or the immune response, which can increase risk for patients to suffer infections, for example. And they have to be injected on a regular basis. And they're prohibitively expensive. List price is over $250,000 per patient per year. And there's a growing challenge for folks with respect to weaning off these drugs or trying to taper off. Once you start on these powerful biologics, if you try to discontinue the drug, you have a very high relapse rate. Real world is showing us that that relapse rate is upwards of 75%. So the great hope for our drug is we would be a twice daily oral. We would have a disease modifying profile, so you wouldn't be dependent on the medication for many, many years. We'd be more accessible because we're oral. We can be prescribed in more points of care. We'd have a more attractive price point, so be more accessible on the reimbursement and insurance side. And just from a convenience for patients, an oral versus an injectable is usually the strong preference for patients.
David, thank you for going over that. With respect to that portion of it, any comments as to any other competitors out there that are trying to do some of the similar things that you guys are trying to do at this point, David? Any just comments generally as far as competitors that are trying to go through the process to get maybe FDA approval or are at the stage you guys are? Because I suspect you guys are probably ahead of the competition, but just talk a little bit about that.
The immune suppressants are a marketed drug. They are on the market, and they are being deployed in patients that are very severe or very advanced, and they are effective, but they carry all the challenges of immune suppression, increased risk for infection, and the requirement for routine injections for prolonged periods of time. So that as far as an incumbent medication, we see the opportunity to displace steroids, which the cardiology community has never been comfortable with because of their toxicity profile, and offer an alternative to having to go on these hard-hitting immune-suppressing biological drugs. But really, if you look at the competitive landscape across heart disease, beyond the focus on the recurrent pericarditis program, which is our lead program, we're also very excited about the data that we just presented at the European Society meeting concerning our Archer trial, which is in acute myocarditis. And this is a more tragic form of inflammation. It affects the heart muscle. It remains the leading cause of sudden cardiac death in people under the age of 35. It's typically caused by a viral infection, but it's also been described as a complication of mRNA vaccines, and certain cancer drugs can cause it. The immune checkpoint inhibitors can cause a lethal form of it. And the challenge for this area is there is no standard of care. There's no drug available in the United States or the European Union with a label claim for the treatment of myocarditis. So we were particularly excited. This was an ambitious trial. We ran one of the largest company-sponsored trials in decades. We enrolled over 100 patients at 34 centers in 5 countries, anchored out of the United States, but we also had prominent centers in Latin America as well as Europe. And we enrolled that trial in record time, and we've just reported what we believe to be the first ever biological impact on this condition. We used high precision MRI to image the inflamed hearts at baseline or when the patients were enrolled in the trial. We then treated them. Half of them got our active drug. The other half received a placebo in a blinded fashion, a double-blind fashion. And then at the end of the 3 months treatment, we re-imaged the hearts. And remarkably, we showed a striking reduction in left ventricular mass, or the mass of the left ventricle. And what happens when the heart becomes ill, it becomes inflamed, it becomes swollen, it gets larger. We significantly reduced LV mass to a degree that is analogous to that which we observe with certain antihypertension medications, some of the obesity drugs like Mounjaro, the heart failure drugs like Entresto. These are blockbuster multi-billion-dollar drugs. And we're achieving our result in just 3 months. Those other drugs are reducing LV mass to a similar magnitude, but over 6 months, 12 months, and longer periods of time. Mechanistically, they're doing it through a different way, either weight loss or reduction in hypertension or high blood pressure. But interestingly, in myocarditis, these patients weren't hypertensive and they weren't obese. So they had normal body mass indexes. So the only way that we're really addressing this impact in this short period of time is to significantly reduce inflammation in the heart and improve heart structure. And that's why it's so exciting, because that not only reads through to potentially the first treatment ever for acute myocarditis, which is a cause of death in young people unnecessarily, but it also provides a gateway and a path to the mass market of heart failure, which is that epidemic I talked about at the start of our conversation, which remains a leading cause of death and is the #1 reason people are hospitalized and rehospitalized throughout the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, it sounds very interesting. Anything you can say as far as the composition, just maybe break down, hate to use the word secret sauce because you're not going to tell me anything about that, but anything you can say with respect to the formulation of the drug and what components that you might want to explain to us.
The drug is a high precision small molecule therapy. It's designed to target something called the inflammasome. So inflammasome activation can be a trigger of inflammation that can be particularly damaging to the heart, the tissue around the heart, and the cardiovascular system in general. So that's the target of our small molecule medication. Our oral form is a prescription strength medication, so patients can get a therapeutic dose very efficiently through the oral twice daily. And then we also have an exciting next generation subcutaneous version of this, where the great hope is patients with chronic diseases as opposed to acute conditions like myocarditis, a more chronic lifelong condition like heart failure. They can have a very efficient treatment schedule, just once monthly treatment. That is our hope. And that drug, both drugs are targeting the same mechanism, but they're just addressing the mechanism in different categories of disease. With the lead oral looking at recurrent pericarditis in a pivotal phase 3 trial that we believe represents a billion-dollar opportunity for the company. Myocarditis, we now have this exciting new readout, which points to a de-risking of that phase 3 trial because it's the second important inflammatory condition that we've shown an impact on. It opens the door for furthering development, potentially in areas of myocarditis and other inflammatory conditions. But most importantly and most exciting is it gives us a direct signal into heart failure or a path into heart failure, because over the past several years, we've shown across multiple preclinical models that we can impact key disease-driving processes in models of heart failure and different models where we've demonstrated this drug's ability to protect the heart. We've now shown the same in the human heart, and that's what they call this translation or proof of concept. So we've shown this impact directly on the human heart. We have a once monthly way to deliver this exciting drug as well as a twice daily oral. And we couldn't be more excited about now driving forward and expanding our developmental efforts to complement the lead phase 3 program in recurrent pericarditis, which include multiple areas of cardiac medicine, because inflammation doesn't just drive it in pericarditis, doesn't just drive it in myocarditis. It drives it across multiple cardiac disease. Think atherosclerosis, think heart failure, think cardiovascular disease in general. Inflammation is an unchecked disease driver, and we hope to be the first company to put it under control.
David, it sounds like also with respect to the time frame, you guys are getting results very quickly, which is going to also be a very important factor. With CardiolRx, can CRD38 also be used in concert? How does that work?
So CRD38, we see that being developed for areas of heart failure medicine, for larger areas of medicine, chronic life-threatening conditions, where patients would have a convenient dosing regimen, such as once per month, as opposed to twice daily oral, where we plan to continue to focus the oral medication on these tragic, debilitating heart conditions that strike fast, and you need to be able to get high dose medication on board quickly to either resolve the shortness of breath or pain syndrome, or importantly, protect the heart against the insidious insult of the immune system. Because if that insult continues and you inflame the heart cells for prolonged periods of time, the heart muscle or heart cells can die. And that becomes an irreversible situation, and that can lead to progression of heart failure. Some patients can require heart transplants, and some die. So that's really why we have this oral therapeutic option, so we can rapidly get the drug on board in those acute, debilitating, rapid onset conditions like pericarditis and myocarditis. And then for heart failure, which is a chronic condition affecting well over 6 million folks in the United States and driving about $40 billion in annual healthcare expenditures. That's where we want a therapeutic strategy where we can get it more accessible to the masses, that has a more convenient scheduling, because patients will need that drug for the rest of their life because it's a chronic condition. But we believe we can manage the inflammation that's destroying their quality of life.
David, thank you for that. That's good information. Post phase 3, let's assume here everything goes well. Phase 3 is a success. Just talk a little bit about the process at that point to, I suspect one of the main focuses would be FDA approval in the United States and deployment there. Just talk about the timing you would suspect to get that FDA approval.
So we're a public company. We have not provided public guidance with respect to the FDA approval timeline. But what I can tell you, Andrew, is we have the orphan drug designation in place. This is a program enacted by the FDA and other regulators around the world to put a spotlight on important rare conditions such as recurrent pericarditis and myocarditis that affect less than 200,000 people in a specific population, such as the United States in this case. So we have that orphan designation that accelerates our path, that makes regulators more of a partner in the regulatory approval process. It typically waives certain very high fees with respect to the filing process. And it generally only necessitates one pivotal phase 3 trial as opposed to two. So we have every hope that we'll be put on that more accelerated path that's usually afforded to the orphan drug designation programs, and that could see our drug into a new drug application cycle that would start immediately following the readout of this important trial, because patients, there's a high unmet need to fill the gap between first-line therapy and these hard-hitting immune-suppressing biologics. And right now, steroids are in the middle, and it's really steroids that we want to displace. And then we want to offer, obviously, better therapeutic option or choice before you commit to these expensive immune-suppressing biologics.
David, would you say that the FDA is really the gold standard really needed for approval? If you guys were to deploy non-US, for example, is the FDA important at that point, or how important is the FDA in this process so we can get a flavor for that understanding?
The FDA is certainly one of the most rigorous regulatory body in the world. So it's really the high test. It's the high watermark test for the evolution and development of new medications. So we have a drug manufacturing base that's based in the United States. All of our major trials have been anchored at preeminent cardiovascular research centers in the United States. We have Cleveland and Mayo clinics leading our recurrent pericarditis. They're the two largest pericardial disease centers in the world, and they're collaborating with other prominent centers, including Mass General at Harvard and many others throughout New York and Texas and other regions of the U.S. So couldn't be happier with our clinical infrastructure, couldn't be happier with our interfacing with the Food and Drug Administration, who's been very supportive of our work. We had an end of phase 2 meeting in person in Washington. That meeting went very well. They're aligned with our phase 3 clinical trial strategy. So we couldn't be happier with that. And we're really working in collaboration and in partnership with that agency to speed this medicine to market. And by doing that at that rigorous standard, that positions us very well to globalize the drug. Because if you meet that high bar, that high standard of FDA approval, which then provides entry into the largest market in the world, which is the United States, you have yourself a foothold through that regulatory cycle, and that allows you then to expand through other attractive large markets throughout the world more efficiently.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the case. And certainly the US, maybe on a per capita basis, I haven't looked at this work or this data myself to determine this, but I would suspect and make the assumption that the US market also on a per capita basis probably has more of this condition occurring rather than maybe other jurisdictions, but that's just my assumption. With that, maybe just remind the audience here, you talked a little bit about US market size, should CardiolRx be successful in the US, but just maybe on a more global scale, if you would, maybe talk to the market size on CardiolRx, and then also what the market size would potentially be on CRD38 as a pipeline product, should it be successful as well.
Our belief, based on what's happening in the real market with the uptake of the immune suppressants and the revenues being driven in the U.S. market by the biologics, they exceed 600 million annual run rate now, and with many Wall Street analysts, this is not our numbers. These are prominent Wall Street analysts, like Jefferies, J.P. Morgan, Wells Fargo, very large prominent firms forecasting run rates that some of which exceed $1 billion by 2028. So that's the US market for our lead program in recurrent pericarditis. I'd suggest the rest of the world would be equal in size because you have similar per capita incidence prevalence rates in Europe and other large regions of the world. And then you have myocarditis, which, based on the data from Archer, we believe potentially this could also be deployed in the treatment of myocarditis because typically, when there is no standard of care and you have a drug that has shown a therapeutic effect, in the absence of any drug that's approved, specialists can deploy another approved medicine. So, our strategy is really to focus first and foremost on accelerating the drug development cycle and getting the approval for recurrent pericarditis, having the drug available on the market, and then to the extent that a cardiologist has a refractory or a persistent myocarditis patient, they can also reach for that drug to the extent that they choose to help that patient. And then, of course, with CRD38, that would be an order of magnitude larger in terms of market potential. Heart failure it's really an epidemic, no other way to describe it. You have well over 6 million people affected in the United States, some say 8 million. It drives 40 billion in healthcare expenditures in the US. If you look at heart failure with preserved ejection fraction, so where you get this inflamed fibrotic process that inhibits the filling function of the heart, drugs that have expanded into that area, such as Entresto. That drug is now selling, I believe, 8 billion annually for Novartis. So that's the category or the revenue opportunity for a new entrant into this inflammation-driven area of heart failure medicine. And that's why we're so excited about CRD38 and so excited about these observations in the Archer trial in the hearts of patients from Archer, where we've shown the ability to prevent damage and improve heart structure in these patients for the first time ever.
Certainly a lot of potential here, and the US as a target market makes the most sense. Of course, it also arguably is probably one of the sicker markets as well. Not sure that's by mistake or by design, but nonetheless, very good information on that and very promising here. I want to back up, David, and just talk capital structure for a moment. And also, we'll start with people. You have some very interesting key people at Cardiol that are advancing the research and also helping you to move the company ahead to success. Just talk about some of those folks that are there assisting driving this forward.
Happy to. So we built a board of directors, 6 of 8 members of which are independent. So members of management that serve on the board is myself as CEO and our chief financial officer, but we have a renowned cardiologist, immunologist as chair, who's done groundbreaking work in heart failure research, trained under Dr. DeBakey, who performed the first heart transplant in the United States. We have Wall Street veterans. We have pharmacology experts coming back 25 years. We have manufacturing expertise. And the most recent addition to our board, thrilled that Dr. Timothy Garnett chose to join our board earlier this year. He was the former chief medical officer of Lilly, now the largest pharmaceutical company in the world. Tim held that post from 2008 to 2021. So really has been at the forefront in development of multiple drugs in the cardiometabolic space. And we couldn't be happier to have that level of expertise now on the board. We have our scientific advisory board, really one of the guiding lights. So we have Dr. Paul Ridker from Harvard, one of the preeminent experts with respect to understanding the role of inflammation in atherosclerosis and other areas of cardiac disease. And Joe Hill, the editor-in-chief of the journal Circulation, renowned for his work in heart failure medicine. And then I'm also pleased to be working with an amazing team on the management side and throughout the Cardiol team with expertise coming from industry such as Amgen, which is the first and largest biotech in the world. Our chief medical officer, we were thrilled when he joined us from Amgen about 4.5 years ago, where at Amgen, he was leading their largest development program in the cardiac space. So it's really exciting to have assembled this amazing team of people, all with 30 years experience in their respective areas of expertise, who are working with us in this collaborative way with the preeminent cardiovascular research centers around the world and amazing groups of cardiologists that are helping us guide our medicines ultimately through to be accessible to patients.
Absolutely. It sounds like quite a broad group. You guys cover all the angles there. You definitely have a lot of networking and relationship items there with some of the bigger majors out there as well. So very good information there, and pleased to hear you guys have assembled quite a full, wholesome team there to advance this forward, David. Um, with respect to capital structure, the company just closed back in October a 11.4 million US dollar equity financing expected to extend the capital carry for the company into around 3Q 2027, roughly, depending on how things go, of course. But cover for us the shares outstanding at the company, the key shareholders on the roster, including the board and the management.
So currently it's approximately 100 million shares outstanding. So we have a market valuation of 100 million, which is, it's always perplexing to me because people ask me, do you think the company is properly valued? And when we look at proxies in the market, I think back to 2017, Myocardia, it was a $100 million company throughout 2017. They then partnered with the pharmaceutical industry the next year, which is our intention to partner with pharma next year. And that company went to 2 billion, 6 billion, and then was acquired for 13 billion, all within the span of 3.5 years. And there's been multiple examples of that. The immune suppressing drug I was referencing, that organization has a market cap of about 3 billion. So I think there's a real spotlight that has yet to be focused on Cardiol because we are in a pivotal phase 3 trial. We have advanced programs. We're targeting an area called inflammation, which has never been addressed by available therapy. These conditions do increase risk for death and cardiovascular mortality. And so we're very excited that the company has a 2-year cash runway. All our programs are fully financed. And that puts us in a strong position to execute. And of course, about approximately 10% is held by insiders. And then we have other large institutional shareholders from around the world that have supported the company for many, many years. And combined, they probably, with management, have about 35-40% of the company. But that's sort of a estimate on that. But each and every year at our shareholder meetings, we have wonderful voter turnouts. Typically, 35% of the company show up with their proxy votes in support of management and the board. And so we have a wonderful relationship, and we continue to inform the broader investment community about the great work we're doing. And we think 2026 is going to be a very exciting year for all the reasons we've been discussing. And it's certainly going to lead to a striking revaluation of this organization. That's obviously a prediction and a forward-looking statement, but that's what I believe, and that's why I'm excited to be part of this wonderful organization.
David, a lot of potential there, and certainly no shortage of forward-looking statements on this program. We've definitely heard them many times before, so I appreciate you going through that and covering that. As we wrap up here, I just want to ask you about the potential for strategic partners, David. First, is the company even interested in partnering with companies, maybe some bigger companies in the sector? And if so, what can you tell us about the potential interest in terms of that potential pathway here as companies look at your data, look at your results from the trial, and potentially want to get involved here at maybe an earlier stage on the valuation curve and work with you guys to bring this forward? Is that of interest to the company?
Absolutely. That's a key area of focus of our business development, corporate development efforts. We have a very talented business development officer joined us from prior history, which included Novo Nordisk, second largest pharmaceutical company in the world, to head up our business development program. We're in consultation with multiple different pharmaceutical organizations from around the world, some of them representing some of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. They've never been better financed at any other time in history. I've never in my 30-year career seen such a disparity between undervalued biotech and well-financed pharma with over $1 trillion to deploy into M&A. And you're seeing that almost weekly now, a biotechnology company being acquired or partnered with. And that is certainly our strategy. We pursue this development effort to make sure our medicine gets to patients and helps patients. And the way to do that is make sure you align with a commercial machinery that can ensure the distribution and the marketing and build awareness of your great medicine that you're developing. So we're late stage now in the development cycle. We're targeting mass markets that include heart failure, and we believe will be of great interest to pharma. And we look forward to 2026 to really be accelerating those discussions as we complete our phase 3 program and as we accelerate our heart failure asset. And ultimately, that would lead to a partnership to commercialize our lead medicine and support the accelerated development of our next stage asset for the mass market of heart failure.
David, with that, there's also the question of M&A and that takeover bid, I suppose, for the company. Where do you suppose the sweet spot is, David, with respect to that? Is it post phase 3 success? Is it around FDA approval? Just talk a little bit about how you see that potential for exit under the M&A route.
It could be all of those timelines that you suggest. It could also be sooner because we've just shown this impact on heart structure that's very dynamic, and we believe the first observation ever of it in a classical inflamed cardiac condition, which is myocarditis, which has similar disease processes that lend itself to heart failure. So we now have this connection, this developmental connection for a once monthly sub-Q into heart failure because of this dynamic impact that we've shown on the human heart in the Archer program. And we believe that could potentially accelerate our discussions in the pharma space and in the partnering space. And we're highly focused on that as we speak. And then when you speak about these acquisitions, I always go back to Myocardia, but Myocardia was a $100 million company in 2017 developing a drug for a rare cardiac indication, which is exactly what Cardiol is doing. They were in phase 2 at the time. We're in phase 3. They were 100 million market cap, similar to ours right now. And 3 years later, they were bought for 13 billion. So things can change quickly on the M&A front, and premiums can be extraordinary. And that's just one of many acquisitions in the pharma space that are being reported now. Seems once monthly, we're seeing a multi-billion-dollar takeover of biotech. So we're excited by that. We're excited by the fact that we have this commercial horsepower in the pharmaceutical industry that's so well financed. And we're excited by the fact that we have a drug pointing right at the key culprit, the key driver of these life-threatening, debilitating conditions in heart disease, and that's inflammation.
David, thank you for that. That's great. Good to hear on your comments on how you're looking at the M&A side of that potential route for exit. Well, David, why don't we wrap it up for this introduction to Cardiol? Just one last time here for potential investors who are listening in. The company has a market capitalization of about $100 million US here. Why should potential investors, the institutionals out there, the family office and retail investors, take a position at this stage in Cardiol?
Several reasons. We have a pivotal phase 3 trial operational at the largest, most prestigious pericarditis research centers in the world. That trial's recruitment and progress is now accelerating. That is targeting a market that many major Wall Street analysts are saying is going to be $1 billion by 2028. So that's a very attractive commercial prospect, and that's just the US market. Our programs are fully funded, which is vitally important. So we have a cash runway into Q3 of 2027, and that's through to the other side of the reporting of that important phase 3 trial. We now have just reported our second exciting observation from a phase 2 program, which is this impact on left ventricular mass or swelling and inflammation in hearts of patients with inflammation in the myocarditis setting. We believe it's the first drug ever to show a biological impact from one of the largest trials ever conducted by a company in that important area of medicine that takes young lives unnecessarily and for which there is no standard of care. And then finally, we have that observation, which has really driven enthusiasm and excitement into our CRD38 program, which we are now accelerating, getting it ready for clinical development, because we see this as a potential once monthly treatment to manage inflammation in what is a leading cause of death and certainly a leading cause of hospital admission throughout the world, which is the epidemic of heart failure. We have a phenomenal board of directors guiding and providing stewardship and business development and networking expertise throughout the biggest pharmas in the world. We have phenomenal advice from cardiologists and specialists from around the world on our scientific advisory board, as well as our steering committees for our trials. And Cardiol has an amazing team of people that get up every day and work tirelessly to make sure these medicines are developed in a timely, efficient way. So couldn't be more excited about the positioning of Cardiol, couldn't be more excited about the prospects for a great 2026 coming for the company with many, many important inflection value creating milestones. And that's why I believe it's an exciting investment opportunity.
And for further information, how can interested parties contact the company regarding investment and even those looking at clinical trial participation?
So all of that information is contained on a very informative website at CardiolRx.com, the most comprehensive repository of information for the company. Certainly can reach out through there and get on the company's mailing list. You'll certainly be kept informed of all of our progress going forward and invited to any conferences that we're attending. But that would be the key and most efficient way to find really all the information about cardio, including how you might participate in a clinical study should you be an eligible patient.
David, well, thank you for joining us today to introduce Cardiol Therapeutics, an interesting one. We're looking forward to having you back in the future to update on progress.
Thanks for having me today, Andrew. It was great speaking with you.